Yeah. Welcome back, guys. I'm Mateo, and I'm joined this week by the old
The
Kevin.
old Kevin.
The old Kevin.
It's been a while, but I am back, and we've switched sides of the table.
Yes, the tables have indeed turned. This week, we're going to be talking about mods for Quinly, since we have now had so many kits out there and so
Mhm.
many people have very unique setups on their ender. We figured it'd be a good topic to talk about all the various mods that not only improve your ender's performance, but also improve its performance with the Quinly automation.
Yeah. So how are common or what common mods are compatible with your Quinly, and how can you improve your automation? We're going to discuss those questions shortly. So we do have a Discord channel that we check regularly. Feel free to join into that, and we answer live. Sometimes we're up very late as well. And also, we've got our channel here, or the live chat. Feel free to ask questions. If you've got specific mods that you have that you're unsure about working with Quinly, or you're just wondering if it's possible, please let us know in the chat.
Cool.
So today we're going to start off with different mods that are kind of external to the Quinly kit. Our standard Quinly kit comes with the vapor bed, which offers high adhesion at high temperatures and basically no adhesion at lower temperatures. You've got your tilt kit and your guidance panels. Those are kind of like the basic parts
Mhm.
of the Quinly kit. So that's kind of the basic automation mod that you can get for your Ender. So we're going to go in depth about what else you can do to your Ender.
Yeah. And so um, the Quinly software that drives the automation, that does all your part queuing, is pretty powerful in that we've set it up so that it's compatible with pretty much any Ender 3 mod you can throw at it. As you can see, Kevin's got like probably about a dozen mods on this machine, and it it should work kind of out of the box. And if it doesn't, you can bug our staff on Discord, and we'll help you out with like firmware
Mhm.
updates and all that stuff so that you can get it to work. Um, yeah, so that's kind of, I guess, one of the benefits is the whole idea behind the Quinly software and hardware being that you get to keep the
Mhm.
printer that you know and love and have done all these mods to.
Yeah, don't have to change your slicing.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, so we're gonna start off with performance-based mods. So things if you're looking to improve quality, reduce stringing, uh, these are things that you make your prints look better,
Mhm.
and how they're compatible with Quinly. Then after that, we're going to talk about functional upgrades, things that make your life easier in terms of maintenance, maybe just working with your printer or having it, beside you in your room. And then after that, we're going to talk about automation specific mods. So things that allow you to leave your printer unattended. Um, and then finally, just some personal preference things that we'll touch on.
So yeah, if you're a maker or an entrepreneur, somebody who wants to make a ton of parts using 3D printing, stay tuned because hopefully we'll go through, we'll answer some questions that have been common to us, and yeah, and if you have any of your own questions, pop them up in chat. Uh, Mr. Schaefer is wishing us a good evening on this live stream. So yeah, if you've got any questions, just let us know. So why don't we start with the performance
Mhm.
upgrades?
Yeah, so what limitations in terms of hardware are there with Quinly? Like, what can't you use with a Quinly kit on your Ender?
Um, because we do use the hot end or the x-axis gantry, anything that takes up an excessive amount of space might cause certain problems, but it's always possible to work around
Yeah,
it. There's nothing really that will outright break the Quinly automation. We've spent a very long time designing the software to be able to handle that.
I think the only thing that would be a limitation is the bed. So of course we provide a standard bed size for the Ender 3. So if you've got an extender kit, uh, probably not going to work. There is the CR10, potentially down the road might be something to do with that, but I think that's pretty much the only hardware limitation. Uh, as you can see, in terms of hardware on my Ender 3 Pro here, I've got this direct drive system using the stock extruder, and it's using a V6 hot end with a pet fang cooling shroud. So kind of just an out there mod. I wouldn't say this is necessarily something you should do. I did it more because I could.
That's like most 3D printing
That's like
mods,
most 3D printing mods.
to be honest.
But anyway, it prints fine. Prints fine. There is a potential issue with changing your hot end. Do you want to show the video, Mateo? So we've got a quick clip. This was me printing some engineering parts at home. So here you can see it's starting off, and just at 1 hour, 30 minutes, and 40 seconds, you'll see the part clearing starting 1:31, 40 seconds.
131.
40. Yeah, there we go.
Oh, perfect.
So you can see it's just coming down, and that corner of the pet fang,
The tiny corner.
that tiny corner just gets caught on that cylinder. And I gotta come in and save it. So thankfully I woke up just in time to witness that. So you do have to be careful. There was an issue on that version of the software where we realized we could actually make the hot end move further back before the clearing starts. So it's not as bad as it looks there for your actual system, but that is something to keep in mind. There is a small distance that parts can jam.
Yeah, especially if you're using mounts that cause the hot end to move around or cause the probe to move around. You just have to be aware of that, because there is a very tiny corner of the bed sometimes where you have to avoid really tall, skinny parts.
But what is interesting is sometimes you have parts that will actually get pushed off by the extruder coming down, or the hot end coming down. So, the pet fang has a bit of an angle. If there was a part there, it could actually get pushed off by that angle. We had a large vase printing almost the entire build plate, probably 40 centimeters tall, and it went back like underneath the extruder where it would come down. But because the vase had a curved top side, it was actually pushed off as the Z gantry came down. So
Yeah.
just some things to be careful about. Of course, if you do one test print and it clears fine, then it should
Yeah,
be
it's
fine to
not
run
gonna change.
autonomously after that.
Yeah, and you can use like pretty much the entire build area. Oh, sorry. You want me to go back to it?
Yeah. See our pretty faces.
Yeah, of course. Cool. Yeah, so that's performance. You can get a ton of performance around doing the V6 upgrade. Direct drive is also always nice. And then this massive head fang that you've got on there.
Anyway, I think that's pretty much everything for performance, unless you have anything to add in the comments. We can always come back if you do. But moving on to functional upgrades. So like I said, things that add reliability to your printer, reduce maintenance, and just prevent the chance of print failures, I would say, is what these mods are about. So biggest functional mod I'd say is auto leveling. So we highly recommend using auto leveling with Quinly. Both BL Touch and inductive probes are supported, and it allows you to set a Z offset across the whole bed, so you don't have to deal with especially if you have the stock springs where if you adjust one corner it affects the other corner.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about that as much. And so while it is a durable bed with the plastic, it's not very tough against your metal hot end jamming across it.
And and part of what makes it so critical to automation is now that you're running your printer like 24/7, there's plenty more opportunity for it to become de-leveled. Especially if you're running the stock springs. Just the bed heating up and cooling down again can cause it to move around to a point where the nozzle could start jamming in or end up like moving far enough out of register with the hot end that your layers don't stick anymore or are too far away. So auto leveling definitely has been basically one of the stock standard upgrades we do on our printers, which we have 51 Ender 3s here, and pretty much the one of the two big mods we do to it is we put an inductive probe on every single one of them. Yeah, so that's extremely important if you want to keep your automation going reliably.
Yeah. And another kind of functional mod that we heard about in our Discord the other day, which I hadn't actually heard about before, but kind of makes sense, is the addition of linear rails to your Ender 3. So this replaces the stock rollers either on the Z gantry or the Y-axis or both. And it's basically just a sliding arm instead of the roller wheels. And there were some reviews that I watched that show that there really isn't much performance improvement.
Okay.
Like maybe in some cases there might be some ghosting reduction, but in general, like everything's the same. You're not gonna have overhang differences or anything.
Right.
The big thing with those that I see is, like you mentioned before, the stability of your bed. So you're not going to get micro adjustments just from your bed moving around. You a lot of the time after a while you gotta go under, tighten the eccentric nuts in the rollers. They get covered in dirt. So that's like a good benefit I see with that if you're running your automation over and over again, but otherwise might not be the most beneficial upgrade.
Yeah, and I mean it even like Creality is clearly wise to the bed wobble being an issue because like with their Pro and V2 models they've switched to this double wide extrusion here just to combat that. But I know on our regular enders it's a pretty can be a pretty big problem just because stuff will drift over time as the wheels wear. So yeah, I could see linear rails being really beneficial in that respect.
And lastly, in terms of functional prints, is motherboard upgrades. So, if you listen carefully, you can't actually hear this printer running.
Yeah, usually we don't have the printer in the stream because it's so noisy, but not this one.
And that's because it's running a silent motherboard. So I've got the 4.2.7, the official Creality silent board, and it does exactly that, makes the motor silent.
Yeah,
which is pretty cool.
So we do provide official firmware support with Quinly on that as well, so that if you do decide to do this mod, it will work out of the box. You just have to download the right version of the firmware. Quinly will see that and then adjust.
And then there are other motherboard options. One of the more common ones in the stock Ender is the 8 bits, 1.1.x version.
Yeah.
And that's not always desirable because you can't do as much with the firmware. It's not silent.
8-bit is kind of on its way out, I think, at least in my opinion. Everyone's doing 32-bit now.
Some other beneficial upgrades to motherboards is potential for Wi-Fi integration. Of course, with Quinly, you don't really need that.
Yeah.
So, what other boards are there? There's the SKR, or is that right? SKR E3, which is compatible because it's Marlin based. So the Quinly does run off of Marlin firmware. So a board like the Duet boards, which is RepRap based, I don't think is compatible.
We haven't tested it yet, but I don't think it is at the moment.
Yeah. So at least right now,
it's on. We'll talk about future software updates too to Quinly, but it's definitely on our radar because I personally really like the Duet boards.
Yeah. So moving on to upgrades to automation. So what is an upgrade to your automation? Well, anything that makes it easier for you to leave your printer at home. So, whether that's peace of mind, whether that's better reliability, or better output of your parts. So, of course, like I mentioned, the first step to automation is to actually get an automated kit. So, Quinly's first of its kind, that gets you your automation.
Yeah, it's all you need. If you just have a bare bones Ender 3, it's all you need to get it running as like a micro factory. on your desk. However, the other mods we'll be talking about as soon as Kevin returns uh, will talk about improving that already massively improved production capacity. So even just putting like the Quinly kit, the software, the bed, the tilt kit on a stock Ender 3 reduces your interaction time with the printer by about 90%. And now for some people 90% isn't good enough, and we got to squeeze that last 10% out. And so uh, Kevin and the rest of our guys here have been working on other mods that can help shorten things like the time in between print or improving print speed. And then, of course, there's actually updates being worked on within Quinly itself that just optimizes how things are done, so that you can print more parts faster, while you can go and do other stuff and not have to babysit your machine.
So big one that we've been working on, and we've just released a DIY video on how to do yourself, is parts cooling or bed cooling. So on the side here, we've got this just a 50-15 blower fan that's clipped in, and it's connected to a limit switch that's just under the Y extrusion.
So when the Y-axis homes, it hits a limit switch that triggers the fan. It's like a super simple circuit that Kevin's put together, and I mean, like, how long did it take you to put it together?
Put it together about maybe 20 minutes once I kind of figured out what the actual design was.
Yeah.
You know, it just goes directly into the power supply. Like originally, I had a design to connect it between the connector at the back, but that was a bit overkill. So we actually have just a little quick video comparing, so you can see exactly how effective it is.
Yeah. So because the system is partially temperature based, adding just an active cooling system to it, even as simple as a fan and a switch, has like reduces the cycle time by 50%. So
Yeah.
I'll just play the video again. So
11
this
minutes,
one on the
30.
right, yeah. Were those one layer prints?
No, those were maybe like 12 layers.
Oh, okay, they're kind of tall. That's cool. They're pretty flat. So yeah, it's a pretty good performance improvement, because if you consider, if you're doing like a bunch of 1 or like 50-minute parts, let's say, and you'd be able to get about 24 of those in a day, you'd essentially be able to get what is it? You 24 times 10. So you'd be able to get about 3 extra parts every day just by doing this like
simple upgrade.
$10 upgrade that you can probably do from parts you have around the house. Like, I'm sure everyone's got extra fans lying around.
Yeah, and even if you're not looking for improved output, like maybe you're only printing every once in a while for a hobby or something, it saves you 10 minutes of staring your print down as it's about to finish. We all have that feeling of, oh, it's about to finish, and then just wanting to pull it off. You know, we recommend not pulling parts off of your hot vapor bed. So that can definitely be tempting. So definitely saves you there.
Yeah, saves you a bunch of time. And then what's this thing over here?
So that there is a Pi cam. So it's running off of the Raspberry Pi that has the Quinly software on it, and so our mount comes with a ribbon cable hole, and then I've just made a little stand here, and that lets me stream a video of my print wherever I want. So currently, I had to use the Raspberry Pi terminal to stream to a YouTube stream for me to watch at work. And then when my print failed, I texted my roommate to turn off my printer.
Nice.
But I think there's some future implementation with our Quinly software. Why don't you talk about that?
Yeah, I think having a visual feed to your printers, even though they are automatic, just gives you so much peace of mind. And if you actually look in the Quinly terminal, there's a spot for a live stream that we're working on putting together. So there eventually will be live camera feed to the kit, as well as I guess we could go into some of the other things that kind of will help you monitor your prints as they're going overnight and away, and as you're away. We're also looking at putting in not just an active leveling grid, but one that's linked to every part so that you can see whether the bed is drifting over time, which can be really important for automation because it can help you predict when you'd have to level next. And then Steven's come up with a cool solution that we haven't started working on yet, but he spec'd it all out where it can actually, based on that mesh data, it can tell you like how many times to turn each knob in order to.
That's pretty cool.
to
No,
bring it
no
back.
more sticky notes under the hot end.
Yeah, exactly. And just by looking at the trend of the grid over time. So yeah, there's, I guess, in terms of the Quinly updates in the works, there are a lot of things that we're trying to put together to improve the experience of not having to run your printer yourself. And one of the, I think I have to give a shout out to the Discord because the feedback there has been pretty amazing. Like, I think just in the last week, I probably added 5 or 6 new software stories just based off of discussions I've had with people in the Discord, what their experience was and how they were using the automation themselves, how it fit into their workflow. So yeah, there's on that front, there's lots coming down the line. Yeah.
One more mod in terms of automation that's more just for ease of use is adding a buck converter to power your Raspberry Pi. So if you can see here, I've got this USB-C cable that goes around the back and connects to the power supply. So that uses a 24 to what, like 5 volt to power the Pi. And that means that I don't have to turn off my Pi and then turn off my printer and then turn on my printer and then turn on my Pi every time I want to do something on my printer. So that just saves some ease of use.
Definitely. Kay Schaefer asks, do you think solid silicone mounts for the bed springs would be a good replacement, or something like the lock nut? I think I can speak to the lock nut. We've tried using lock nuts and Loctite on the on the bed with yellow springs, so with the firmer springs in the past on our production machine, and we actually found it helped a little bit, but I think the drift that you see in beds with the Ender 3 is actually caused more by temperature fluctuation and also the wheels and the really thin leverage on the y-axis. So it's more like those wheels are there to compensate for that other movement and settling that happens in the frame and in the bed itself, the heated bed itself. So I think ultimately we removed those, or we don't use them anymore because we would essentially block ourselves from compensating for those other motions. But once we found a good and reliable bed leveling solution, that's kind of what we've used since, and that's been these really inexpensive inductive probes from Amazon.
Yeah, the probes themselves are only like $12 about
Canadian, yeah.
And then actually installing them depends on your printer. If you've got an 8-bit, you can use a diode, but you need to use some resistors if you've got a 32-bit. But other than that, it's fairly simple to install.
I have heard though that the silicone standoffs perform better than the springs. I've never tried it
Yeah.
myself though, so I don't know.
I feel like the easiest thing with the standoffs would be like knowing that they're not compressed. Like, because sometimes you get like springs super compressed
And it
or
causes a warp in your entire,
yeah,
yeah,
or like eventually you can't tighten it anymore. It's a lot. I feel like it'd be easier to tell with the standoffs.
for sure. Yeah. Um, you want to go into like the specifics of how you put together these all the mods you've got on the printer? Because I we didn't talk actually too much about what all goes into just this hot end setup itself. So it's a V6,
Yeah.
a probe. You've got a squirrel fan wired in with the giant shroud,
Hmm.
and then you bolted on a, I guess, an
So
extruder
this is
adapter.
the stock extruder just on an adapter I found on Thingiverse. And that's mainly just to help with retractions. If you notice, like I've also got the spool above the printer, kind of
Right.
more in the stock position. The Quinly kit comes with a spool holder adapter that goes on the side to give like a direct path with the direct drive.
Mhm.
Straight down is more direct. Um,
Right. This is closer to a Prusa setup, I guess, in terms of the filament path.
so one thing that we didn't talk about though is printing for different materials. Uh, so doing the direct drive retraction can help with certain like stringy materials. But another thing is, your Ender 3 stock Ender 3 is a little limited in terms of performance.
Yeah.
With the V6, you can get an all metal hot end, and that allows you to print your hot ends up to how hot do you print like
I've done like full prints at 280 on it.
yeah, so
You can go
if
higher
you're
if you
doing like
want.
nylon or polycarbonate,
Yeah.
you could potentially print on your ender. The limitation then is actually the bed because of the poor insulation. Uh,
The heated bed, not the
the
vapor
heated
bed.
bed, yeah, it doesn't heat up or it can't be stable at high temperatures. But we found that it's actually really easy to uh, get your bed up to temperatures to work with high temp materials on your vapor bed. There's a tutorial by
Do you want me to
yeah,
find it?
let's just bring that up.
Let's pop it up on stream. Here it is.
So by TH3D Studio, it's just a DIY bed installation tutorial where they put some piping insulation and then aluminum tape over top. And that allows you to go instead of like a max of 110, a max of like at least 180.
I've done, yeah, so when we were doing our material testing, we actually did use an Ender 3 with the V6, and Stephen had put together a bed from this tutorial, I think.
Hmm.
Um, and we were able to print in a like in a normal room at room temperature. The bed was able to get up to I think 140 pretty
Hmm.
easily. And I was testing nylon between like 110 and 145. Um, Polycarbonate I was also printing at like something like 130. And yeah, so like this mod, I think it cost them like $30 to do at most. And it's been really good if you want to push your Ender 3 to actually run engineering materials. The main limitation we found with it is that with materials that require high heat, they also require high ambient temperatures. So if it's not enclosed, um, you can end up getting some really, really nasty
Hmm.
warping, especially with nylon. Actually, Steven was able to print really big parts like that went across the whole bed in polycarbonate, but nylon unenclosed was kind of
Yeah.
tricky for sure.
So, when doing like a high temperature mod, you do have to be careful because, once you put that insulation on, once you put it into a heated enclosure, you're really limiting your ability to cool down the vapor bed, which needs the low temperature to release parts.
Yeah.
So, if you're not printing polycarb regularly, probably wouldn't be ideal, unless you have like a separate ender to use instead.
Mhm.
Uh, or if you're using a heated enclosure, you might need to have temperature control.
Yeah, yeah. In some cases, like it depends how crazy you want to get with it. Like the polycarbonate releases at like 60 degrees C, so as long as your ambient temperature isn't that high, you should be good. And honestly, with the Ender's electronics, they start to melt at about 50, so I doubt that many people will be pushing 60.
With that motherboard fan that's connected to the
Yeah,
part cooling fan.
yeah, exactly. You don't usually use part cooling for those parts, but yeah, so like um it's totally feasible to print something like polycarbonate, something like nylon that is really dependent on a hot enclosure. I would say maybe not. Um, but it does work with the vapor beds. If you're doing tiny parts, you should be able to deal with it.
So usually we have or the firmware or the Quinly
Oh, are
software
you
should
running
move
the
it
old
to the.
version?
Yeah, I think I'm running the old version here. But it should send the bed right to the back where it activates the fan
Yeah,
cooling.
I can see the part cool the bed cooling fan has gone off. So that was a step we added into the reset routine when it was a while before you published your video, but it
Mhm.
was when you had started experimenting with just having a bed cooling switch in the back, so that in the case you do decide to do this mod, it's super simple to do. You just put it together, and you won't have to do any sort of software update or anything,
Mhm.
or firmware changes for that matter.
So kind of lastly, in terms of personal preference, one thing that or a reason I kind of did some of these mods is so that I could actually sleep with my printer running in the same room as me.
Hmm.
So you notice there's this big fan here that's definitely not stock. That's actually a Noctura Silent fan that I got on for sale. And it's just got a printed duct that goes into the power supply, and the stock one, especially on the regular Ender, is pretty loud.
Super loud.
And this one I can't hear it. Like the only thing on this printer that I can actually hear is the hot end fan, which you can't really
Not too
use.
bad.
It's not bad, and you can't really use a quieter fan, otherwise it just doesn't cool enough.
Yeah.
Um, but that's kind of my reasoning behind that.
Yeah, and I mean for a lot of people, if they're just getting a Quinly kit to do kind of small batch production, a lot of the people we've spoken to in the past, on this show as well, like the Etsy stores, they're running these machines out of their own house, and they have to deal with the heat, the smell, and the noise
Mhm.
of them. So just doing something to make the printer quieter is can be a huge quality of life improvement for a lot of people.
Hmm.
Um, what other mods do you like to put on your Ender?
Well, I do enjoy tinkering. That's kind of why I did that. Another thing is the cable chains, which kind of stick out. And I found one, the organization just looks so much nicer than having all these wires dangling. Uh, but also, I found that occasionally you get a wire get stuck in the said screw, uh, or with all these extra wires at the back, maybe something gets stuck on the bed. So
That's happened before,
yeah,
for
so that's
sure.
something that I really like to put on. With the Quinly kit, there is also a fair bit of option in terms, where you mount your Pi, if you want a Pi cam. Uh, what else?
That's the primary option you
Yeah.
get. Where to mount the Pi.
But sky's the limit in terms of other mods: extruder, hardware, uh, spool,
Yeah,
location.
yeah, doing something insane like this,
With
relocating the
with
extruder.
this direct drive upgrade, I actually had to extend the ribbon cable, because it isn't quite long enough for the motor, but that's not too difficult. Just need some soldering.
Hmm.
Do you have anything else to add, Mateo?
I mean, I can talk about the mods that I've personally done on my printers in the past. Um, and some things that I've talked about with the people in our Discord. One of them was the IDEX mod
What's
for an Ender 3, so the independent extruder mod. Somebody was asking about that.
how
Um,
does that work?
you've got two extruders that can move independently. So if it's like dual extrusion, but you can like there are a couple modes you can do. You can just use it as dual extrusion and then just stow away the nozzle you're not using. So
Mm-hmm.
one will come in and print, and then the other one will come in and print. And then there's some fancier firmwares to let you do like mirrored printing or simultaneous printing with both
Wow.
nozzles. And they were asking us about whether that could work. And as long as I guess the answer was as long as the G code is like relatively vanilla, it should be fine.
Mm-hmm.
The Quinly is actually built to be compatible with dual extrusions if you ever
Yeah,
are
no,
running
I
that.
this dual extrusion on the Ender 3 might be a little funky. Like this direct mod is heavy enough, as you can
Yeah.
see. It's pretty big.
Yeah, but people do dual Bowden pretty often, or like as often as one of the more rare mods can be. But like the Quinly software is able to handle that just fine. And Stephen, our other engineer, when he was doing material testing, he actually used dual extrusion in order to be able to print more funky, flexible materials.
Right, like
Like,
the TPU.
yeah, exactly. So one limitation of the Vapor auto release and just the Quinly kit in general is that it can't figure out how to auto release TPU. We still haven't figured out how to do that. And so our workaround has been just to print a raft out of PLA or some other, it could be ABS too, because ABS works really well on with Quinly. And then you just print the TPU or TPE or whatever right on
Mm-hmm.
top of that with the second nozzle. And then what we found was if you dial your settings in right, you can just peel the TPU part right off, and the PLA or ABS wrapped on the bottom completely releases just
Yeah,
like
so your
PLA
part just
would.
slides off, and the only post processing is just
Yeah,
peeling it.
you peel your part off. And so yeah, that's a cool possibility if you're looking to do automated production of flexible parts. That's actually is possible with just by adding a second extruder. Um, Added heat sinks to the stepper motors and put dampers on them also. That's actually a really good uh, suggestion as well. That was a mod I had done on my first printer, which was a Rostock Max, but stepper dampeners were really popular before things like silent mainboards came out. And those do help a lot in terms of the sound, especially with that printer. It was like a big kind of echo chamber.
Well, you don't want to play Star Wars with your
Y-
axes moving
Yeah,
around.
it sounded like some kind of space war going on in my basement. Especially because it was a Delta and it was a really big Delta at that.
Man, those sound like cars or planes taking
Yeah,
off.
it was kind of it was I I feel like a lot of people could relate, but at some point I could actually like hear the printer even though it wasn't printing, just because the motors were so loud. But yeah, dampeners are a really good choice. And I think they work fine. I don't think you have any issues running them on the Ender 3. The only thing you can't really dampen is the Z, um, which is one of the louder axes on this printer. However, it doesn't move that often, so you don't really hear it too much, only when it homes and stuff. Um, Heat sinks to the stepper motors is an interest. I've actually never done that myself. I've always just moved the steppers to somewhere colder. So like when I built a heated enclosure for my roast stock, I had actually moved the extruder out of the enclosure, and the axis steppers were also out of the heated area of the enclosure. But I never thought to just put heat sinks on them. That could be a good idea.
Yeah.
What do you?
I'm just thinking about what else there is. Like one thing that I've also kind of read about is adding a second Z screw for.
Oh no, you unplugged
Oh
it.
no! I guess we won't see the release, but
We'll still.
I can push it off.
Yeah.
Uh,
Damn, and it was just about to happen too. It's at the right temperature.
as I was saying, I've seen of a second Z motor for the gantry because you do get a fair bit of flex on the far sides of the gantry, and that can help you keep level prints, especially if you've got a heavy extruder
Like this one.
like this one.
And if you bolt on a linear rail on your x-axis, which I've seen sometimes, that can happen too.
Oh, just for fun, we can.
Oh. Oh, what unfortunate. That was so unfortunate, the timing. Damn it.
My
Oh, well.
bad.
We have so many videos online.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if there's too much else to discuss in terms of mods. We've pretty much exhausted all the common mods and some of the less common mods for the under 3. Yeah.
Yeah, if you do have any other mod ideas or something funky you've done, let us know in our Discord. We always like to know what people do, like
We try to support most mods
yeah,
as well.
if people come to us with like, hey, I've got this extender kit for my Ender 3, like, can I just get a bed for it and use the Ender system? We'll kind of look into it, like, maybe not support.
Well,
we'll look into
we're
it.
actually looking at manufacturing, doing small batch runs of some of the weirder size beds. So it's definitely not out of the realm of possibility. And if there are enough people interested in a particular mod, like we'll try to set something up for you guys, or if you just have like some funky setup and require custom firmware, you can just bug us in the Discord and we'll try to get Quinly working with it, because yeah, our ultimate goal with this kit is to make it work on any setup, whether it's an Ender or whether it's a different printer. Yeah, so if you haven't got the kit already and you're interested in getting one, they are always available at shop.3dq.com. Some people have mentioned they're only interested in the bed. I would tell you to stay tuned. We'll have some news on that pretty soon, like a bed for manual use that still retains a lot of the properties that make it so good to use, like any material printing, and also easy removal once it's done. And yeah, if you want to bother us with many questions, yeah, just feel free to shoot us an email or join our Discord.
Great. Yeah, thank you very much. I hope you learned something. And maybe seeing exactly what you can do with your Ender if you so choose to.
Yeah. And then I think next week or the week
on the 24th,
the
so
24th, 2 weeks from now, we'll be having a discussion with the guys over at Rep Warehouse. They have a ton of experience using 3D printers and are part of the Rep community, and so we'll be talking to them about kind of automation for production, automation in the context of Rep, and all sorts of fun stuff. So we'll hope you join us there. Thank you. Thanks, Schaefer. The product is definitely worth it. We definitely think so, and it seems so far the feedback has been really excellent among all the customers. So yeah, that being said, I guess we'll see you in
2 weeks.
2 weeks. There might be something scheduled for next week, so just keep an eye out on kind of our social media. Our updates are posted on Instagram as well, and Discord or by email. So yeah, We'll see you next time.
Until next time.
Bye bye.